Linda Thielfoldt. I have a really important long arm lifeline for you today on the proper threading of your Gammill. So let's get started. You need your cone of thread, and you want to come to the back of your machine. This is your cone holder. Just slip that on there. Make sure it's down nice and tight over those little wings. The first stop is going to be this thread guide. The one thing you want to make note of with this little thread guide is that this little disc that's on the end is parallel to your table. You don't want it tipped one way or the other. So check that. Make sure that this little screw here is nice and tight, holding that in the proper position. So it's just up through that little hole, around the back through the next one, and then it's onto the next thread guide, which is this little knob here, through that little eye. And then here's a little Linda trick for you. I've come up with this solution to what is often one of the problems with threading. And if you'll notice, I've just made a little loop here in the thread. And I'm going to just kind of wet that a little bit so that it almost acts like a needle. And the little thread guide here that's on the back side of this tension disc, I'm going to carefully try and get that to go through there. So in essence, I have both threads, the doubled over thread, going through that little hole. Now I want to find the end of this loop and separate that. Okay? And then I need to know which is the thread that I'm going to continue threading through. And I want to take that thread on the underside and seat that nicely in those tension discs. Okay? I'm going to let go of it. And now what's happened here is you can see I have both threads coming out back through that little eyelet. And that will prevent this thread from ever slipping out of this tension disc while you're not looking. So we continue on. Next up is this thread sensor, and you want to go around that twice and then on over to this little silver bar, and it's up through the bottom, down through the middle, and up through the last. So all you have to remember is up, down, up, and you've got it. You'll never be confused as to which way you thread that. So next up is to get around this little bar that sits on top of the rotary tension device. So you just want to loop it around there, pull the thread towards the back of the machine. Now here's a little trick for you. You want to, as soon as you get it seated in between those two little tension discs, you want to make sure it's properly in there. Take your finger and just rest it back there. That keeps that from popping out as you make your way around 2 times. Grab that again so it stays nicely seated in between there. And when you come to the top, you want to slide under this little tension check spring right here. Can you see that? That's moving up and down. You want to make sure that you've got that caught. Once you do that, pull down on the thread and go under this thread guide here. Now it's easy street from here. Next up is a take-up lever. So just thread that through the eyelet there. And here's a little trick for you that I like to incorporate. Just get a hold of the thread here. You can just rest your finger on the bed of the machine and just keep it taut. That allows you to easily get the thread through these little thread guides without pulling more thread off of your cone. Now, we're on our last little thread guide here, which is the one that's directly above the needle. You want to make sure you get in that one. You definitely don't want to miss that one, because if the thread comes in from the side, you're going to have tension issues. So then, get to the bottom, and there's a little groove on the front of this needle, and I like to just place my thread in that groove and just push against it ever so slightly. If you start at the top and just push it down, that will just, see how that just jumped right through that hole? So you don't even need your glasses for that one. So we've got our top thread loaded. We're all set on the top end. Now let's get to the bobbin. So I position the bobbin case in my left hand with the opening away from me. I have the bobbin in my right hand with the thread coming off the top, and you notice I'm holding the bobbin thread taut with my fingers. I then place that in the bobbin case, and there's a little groove on the top here. I think you can see that. I'm going to make sure that thread goes through that groove, and then I'm going to slide it under that little tension bar. That is what actually, this little bar here is what keeps the tension on the bobbin thread. So that's very important that you make sure you don't miss that one. Then give it a little tug, make sure that it's coming through there freely, and you're good to go. I hope these threading tips have been helpful to you, and remember, Gammill helps you realize your dream.